Okay, everyone, thank you very much for coming. We are live in the Politico pub. I'm Dan Bloom, political editor in the UK for Politico, and I'm very happy to be joined by Steve Reed, the new Housing, Communities and Local Government
Hello, Dan.
Secretary.
It's nice to be with you in your lovely pub.
Thank you very much. And you've got a beer. Is it real beer, fake beer?
I'm not sure. Shall I just drink it and find out?
Yeah, I think that's best. Cheers. Thanks.
If I start burbling, you know it's a high alcohol one. I burbled already. One sip.
That is a good start.
Yeah.
So, it's just been the PM's speech, so I might as well ask about that. He's done his Gordon Brown-style list of achievements already. It's
so he should. I think it's very important that we outline what the government is achieving. I sometimes think if we're not confident about telling our own story, who else is going to tell our own story? And there are things to point to already. People want to see more change, but what the Prime Minister was outlining, and I thought very powerfully there, very, very clearly, was his vision of national renewal of a country which has a place for everyone in it. And he was talking about things like how we bring tech into renewing the National Health Service, for instance, so you can, on a laptop like that one in front of you, be seeing if you had something wrong with your eye, the country's leading eye specialist, rather than having to travel sometimes hundreds of miles to see somebody at great inconvenience to yourself. Now, that's a good thing, but he was contrasting that, because politics is about choices, with what Farage's party is offering, which is more decline, because he doesn't actually have any proposals about fixing anything, and division, because their proposals to deport people who have been settled here for a long time would actually remove a lot of the people who work in our National Health Service. So people will have a choice at the next general election, and Labour is offering a very positive vision for our country, renewal of our public services, money in people's pockets, and a place for everybody as we bring this country back together.
Yeah, so he called reform, enemies of national renewal and that stuff. And it interested me that he talked about reform crossing a moral line, and he called the policies racist on the weekend. Has Labour kind of moved a bit on this? Are you sort of all Liberals now, or is this more of an electoral strategy?
Politics is about choices. And if we don't explain to the voters what the choices are, what Farage really represents, then it will be blurred to people what happens. So I think we have to be absolutely clear that Farage's party has no answers. They seek to exploit division. Now, we know there are problems with our country that we need to fix, but when Farage sees a division, he shoves a stick in there and seeks to make it wider. When we see a division, we try to work out how we can bridge that. And I thought what was really lovely was having some people sat in the front row, that young woman who had set up a football team because there wasn't one in her school, the young man that fundraised to rebuild a library after it got burnt down. Those little things really matter, because it's what you see on your doorstep in your own community that makes you feel a certain way about who you are and what your country is like. And we need to back people like that while also doing the big stuff like investing in a digitised NHS.
You really like my laptop, don't you?
I love a laptop.
I want to ask you about just one live news story before we get to talking about housing and your brief and all the rest of it. There's been this plan emerged overnight, Donald Trump's plan for Gaza, etc. What do you think of it? Is it wise for us to sort of sit back and let Donald Trump or Tony Blair be Viceroy of Gaza, as the left have called it?
We absolutely need a viable peace plan for Gaza. Nobody wants to see what's happening there continue. There's been far too much loss of life, far too much suffering, far too much destruction. And if this is a peace plan that can genuinely secure the release of the Israeli hostages, get aid and support into the people of Gaza, end the war and then start the process of rebuilding, then that is to be welcomed. It seems to have a high degree of support from other world leaders, from leaders in the Arab nations around Israel. That's going to be very important in making it stick and making it work. But I hope with all my heart that what we're seeing now is the beginning of the end of that horrific war in that part of the world.
There's been some suggestions and reporting by Bloomberg today that some of your cabinet colleagues are not very happy about this plan, or are a bit worried about the sort of effect of supporting a plan that involves sort of Tony Blair in the Middle East. Have you heard of that? Are you worried about that?
No, I haven't picked up any of that. You need individuals involved in this who have the respect and support both of the Arab nations around Israel and of the United States. Now, whoever, it's going to be a relatively small pool of people to draw from to find people who can do all of that. So, I don't know to what extent Tony Blair has been involved in that or will be involved in it, but we need to make sure that we get people that can guarantee that this peace plan, if it's viable, can stick.
Have you got one of your hats with you? Do you want to put it on?
Has anyone got a Build Baby Build hat? They
Let's talk
are the
about
merch of conference, and I'm very happy to put the hat on.
We'll
for
talk
you.
about them in the
I
meantime.
did have some, but I had one with me for Keir's speech, but I just bumped into the Japanese ambassador.
Can you get it to him?
Now he's got it. Yeah. But everyone sees them, wants them. They've been a bit of a sensation, I have to say.
Are you aping Donald Trump then?
No, it's not. It's we're taking red caps back for the people, clearly. But what it was about, Build Baby Build. It's a brash slogan. It was intended to get people's attention, but behind it there's a really, really serious message. Because in this country we have a housing crisis, and the effects of that crisis are that homelessness, rough sleeping, people sleeping in shop doorways and underpasses has doubled under the Conservatives. In my casework as an MP, over 50% of what people come to talk to me about is housing. A lot of families stuck in temporary accommodation. You're meant to be in there no longer than 13 weeks. I've seen families stuck in it for years. And that often means the kids don't even have their own bedroom. They don't even have their own bed to sleep in. Parents sleeping on a sofa in a single room where all of their living takes place. What damage is that doing to young people growing up? And yet that has doubled under the Conservatives. Rents have gone up 50%, while wages flatlined for a decade. So that's eating into people's take-home income and their ability to go out and enjoy their lives. And young people, I see a lot of young people in the room, in the pub here, can't get that first foot on the housing ladder and make the dream of home ownership come true. Now, why did my generation get chances that are denied to this new generation? Now, that might be fine for the Tories who don't care, but it's not fine for us. So, Build Baby Build means getting Britain building again so we can tackle the moral stain of people sleeping out on the streets, but also open up the dream of home ownership to people in this country that want to participate in it and want to see that dream come true for them.
I'll get to the housing in just a second, but on the strategy, do you think, or you clearly seem to think, there's something to learn from MAGA campaigning here, from Trump's, the way he presents himself? Because the big red hats, I mean, it's unmistakable.
Yeah, right? What I think is that we need to be able to communicate in bold colours, broad brush.
Red colours.
Red colours.
hats.
Well, red is the colour of the Labour Party, as well as the Republicans of the United States. But red is our colour, and we need to be painting in bold colours. So, Build Baby Build was intended to get a bit of cut through. It's a bit of fun as well. The run-up to conference didn't feel that happy. There were some difficult things going on. We wanted to give people a lift, but I wanted to communicate something serious, but in a way that got cut through. So I think it did get cut through. I've been here, so I haven't been watching the media all the time, but people have been sending me clips and videos and images. So it's kind of has cut through a bit. But if people are left with the impression that here's a Labour government, they want to build homes, that's going to give me a chance to make my dreams come true. Just outside this morning, I was waiting outside my hotel, which is outside the zone, and an exhibitor came past, so not a Labour Party member, and said to me, I really like the Build Baby Build thing because I want to own my own home, and so far I haven't been able to. So people are understanding it to communicate what I want to communicate, and I think sometimes we're a bit processy about how we communicate. Sometimes it's not crystal clear what we're trying to do, but you need the big broad message as well as the more detail comes underneath it.
Is it? A lot of MPs say that this sort of processy thing in communication is a number 10 problem. Do you agree with that?
No, I think it's that communication is changing rapidly because of digital media, and the party can be really good at it. In the general election, we had some fantastic digital comms. I was the Shadow Environment Secretary and then became the Environment Secretary, and they had some pretty eye-catching graphics about sewage in the water. I won't describe them, but they did carry the message very, very clearly. And I think when you go into government, when you've got the kind of, we had a 24 our news media for a while now, but now it's constant. It's on your phone, it's on your device. We need to be able to communicate almost in the same way that we campaigned, but we need to make it more permanent. And I think with digital media, that probably means more visual, more short form, more eye-catching than we've done it before. You don't have to say everything in each communication, but you've got to add something each time you're communicating. And I think we need to be better at that while we're in government, in the same way that I thought, did an excellent job in the campaign.
I want to ask you about new towns. So you've announced this week, obviously government wants to build 12, and you've announced that 3 will start by 2029. Yeah. When are you going to start the rest of them? You're going to give me a deadline?
So what we've said, we commissioned a task force to look at which of the many bids that had come in were those that would be progressed. And they identified 12 new towns, and those will be progressed, of which they identified 3 that were the most promising. So those were Cruise Hill outside Enfield, Leeds South Bank up in Yorkshire, and Tempsford in Bedfordshire.
Well remembered. Yep.
Huh?
Well remembered.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Despite having had a bit of beer, but they're going to be very, very important. But they're the most promising. But there needs to be strategic environmental assessments before you can absolutely confirm which will go ahead. But we will get spades in the ground on 3 of them before the end of this Parliament, and we will progress work on the other 9. So that is separate to the 1.5 million homes that we're going to build before the end of this Parliament.
But are we talking spades in the ground on the other 9, in the next Parliament? Will they all be spades in the ground by 2034?
Well, we need to do the work to give a timeline to all of them. What I can say is we'll have spades in the ground for at least 3 for this Parliament. Building a whole new town isn't just like building 50 new homes. You've got to make sure all the infrastructure is there, the public transport is there, the investment that's going to bring jobs. People want hospitals, they'll need schools in there as well. They want access to green spaces. I mean, these could be, we're asking people to be really innovative about what we might be able to do with the new towns. Like, we were just hearing about, I keep pointing to your laptop, but what would an AI-enabled town look like? How could we make people's lives easier by putting AI at the centre of how we build it and how people can access information and public services? We need people to be really creative as we're working forwards to what these places will be like.
What's an AI-enabled town?
I don't know.
Can
That's
you
why I'm
explain for the room?
expecting people to be creative about it. But we've got a lot of technology that is coming through. We're going to be building data centres and gigafactories all over the country. Technology does things that I never present myself as a tech guy. I have problems dealing with the multiple devices I already have, but people that are working in this area will know you can change the way that transport happens, how food is delivered to your home. You can have smart fridges. There's all sorts of things that you can do, and I think we should look at the opportunities.
And will anyone be living in any houses in these new towns by the time of the next election?
Well, we need to look at what the trajectory will be. So I don't know in detail yet, because we're going to still work it through. We'll confirm the initial 3 in the spring, and then we'll get more detailed plans. So we'll need to work that through. Like, all I can give you is a guess, so I won't do that. We will progress them as quickly as we can.
I want to ask something that a few people have brought up with me, right? So MHCLG, big fan of devolution. There's lots of Labour devolution plans. At the same time, you've got Reform kind of marching and taking control of councils and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you really want to be deep in your soul devolving lots of powers to reform councils that Prime Minister has just basically said are the enemy?
Well, one of the problems with the UK is we have very, very deep and profound regional inequalities. Some regions of England are as poor as regions in Eastern Europe, and yet we're an advanced Western nation. We can't continue like that. It's pulling the country apart. And we need to equalise the economy, and that requires us to equalise power. Get power out of Whitehall. We're massively over-centralised. Get it into the regions. And then, as you saw with our Pride in Place funding, we're looking to give power directly to communities, not to politicians at all, but directly to communities as well. Now, you can't say you're in favour of devolution and localism, but only when Labour is in power. That would be ludicrous, because it's up to people to elect who they want to elect. I think the opportunity will be, as more power goes to regions, as we have more mayors, even directly to communities, where there is a reform there, people will see more clearly what reform are really about. And if reform are not delivering the change people want to see, if they're not building the homes, if they're not improving the local public services, people are far less likely to use their vote in a local or regional election as a protest vote against the party in power nationally, because they will know that it makes a real impact in their lives. So I think we will devolve power, but where reform are elected, we will hold them to account for their failures, and then the electorate will have a choice.
How much was the pride of place stuff that you brought up you and Morgan McSweeney thing? Because you go back years and years on this stuff.
Yeah, we go back years and years, and like he was my campaign's organiser when we were campaigning to win Lambeth back in 2006. Now, we won that year in a very bad year for Labour, but we won by a landslide when we lost a lot of other councils, and then he was my chief of staff as we were running the council. And one of the things that we did was look at how you can give more power directly to people that use services, or to communities and people living in their own neighbourhoods. And it dramatically improved the way that services were running. To give you one example, the children's services in Lambeth, when we were elected, well, I was elected, he wasn't, but when our party was elected, were rated amongst the worst in the country. When I left 6 years later to become stand for Parliament, those children's services were rated not just the best in the country, but it was the first council to be rated outstanding in every single category. And that happened not because of any particular insights of mine, but because we gave the kids who were living in foster care, the kids who were being looked after, and their families a much bigger say over the kind of services that they wanted to use. So I know that empowering people on the front line improves public services. And in the job I'm in now, as Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government, I want to look at how much further we can go in giving power to communities, because with the right support, you obviously mustn't overburden people. We're not talking about coming into buildings and actually running them, but you should have a voice. You should have a hearing about what you want those services to do, and they should respond to what you're saying as a service user. My experience, and I know from Georgia Gould was doing something similar in Camden, up in Wigan, they were running a similar model, but it leads to better services, higher rates of satisfaction, and it rebuilds trust in politics, because people see that they engage, there's change, and things get better. And that's exactly what we need to do to rebuild trust in politics.
I want to ask you a laptop-related question.
That worries me.
You know that Sky interview when you were asked about Labour together, and the Tories said it was very convenient that your internet cut off at the same time. Did you cut your own internet off?
No,
Okay.
no. What happened was I was standing in front of an iPad and I was speaking, and a little thing came up, 5% power left, and then it just powered down. It was still working, so I was able to still talk, but no, it switched itself off.
I should say about Labour Together, you were involved in it way back in the early days.
Yeah, helped set it up.
Do you buy this, how much were you aware, put it that way, that it was this, as it's painted now, a secretive cabal to get one wing, your wing, of the Labour Party into power?
It wasn't a secretive cabal at all. We had a group of MPs that we got involved that wanted to be involved in how we reconnected our party with the country, and those MPs included Bridget Phillips and Wes Streeting, Johnny Reynolds, Jim McMahon, a lot of people that have now got senior roles in the government. But we all came together, as politicians should, in my view, to think about, at a time Labour was losing support of the polls, how do we reconnect Labour with the country? And that's exactly what happened after Keir Starmer became leader of the party. He picked the party up off the floor. He led us through a landslide general election victory, and now that majority in Parliament gives us the obligation to deliver the change that people voted for. So I think politicians talking to each other about how you make things better is what we need more of.
On the donations thing specifically, so the Electoral Commission has said they're not taking this any further.
Yeah.
There is a book by a journalist called Paul Holden that's coming out soon where, he's claiming there's more about it in there. Yeah. You were obviously involved in this organisation. I mean, you were mentioned very, very briefly in passing in one of these letters that, legal letters, just saying you didn't know that meetings were minuted or whatever. Do you think there's more to come, or do you think everything is out there?
No, this journalist, I think, is the son-in-law of somebody who worked very closely with Jeremy Corbyn in Jeremy Corbyn's office. And if you read the book, it's trying to whitewash the anti-Semitism scandal that happened under Jeremy Corbyn, so you can draw your own conclusions about why they've written what they've written. But on the particular point you're talking about, Labour Together identified the mistake itself, reported it to the Electoral Commission. They investigated it years ago, imposed a, in relative terms, small fine, then closed the case. Now the Tories have tried to sling mud and claim there was something else going on. The Electoral Commission have considered what they said and said, no, there was nothing else going on. The case was closed years ago, and that really is it.
And the fundamental question about it is, were these donations declared late? So to kind of basically conceal the weight of support behind Labour Together at the time.
Not. Of course not. No, of course not. I mean, that was closed years ago, and it was fully dealt with. Yeah, and as soon as Labour Together realised its own mistake, it was Labour Together that reported it. Now, the implication behind what you're saying is that it was attempting to cover things up. If you're covering things up, you don't self-report them.
I've got into very serious territory, and I'm going to lift us back out of it briefly. I'm going to give you a quick fire round and then go to a roving mic around the room. Pardon my French. Build, baby, build, or let's fucking do it.
I prefer the politer version of Build Baby Build. I think the other alternative on hats wandering around Labour Party conference wouldn't go down so well.
I mean, it is wandering on hats around the conference. There are bucket hats, yeah.
With the second phrase?
With the second phrase,
I haven't seen those. Right, okay, yeah.
We'll get you one.
No, I don't think I want one. Not a good look.
Newts or bats, which one would you rather club to death with your bare fists?
I'm not in favour of clubbing any animals to death. I'd rather that we build train lines around where they're living rather than realising after you've wasted £100 million that you made a mistake.
Greens or Reform, which would you rather have to spend an evening in the pub with?
Oh, God. I think I would give up alcohol.
Keir Starmer or Morgan McSweeney?
Morgan's been one of my closest friends for 25 years.
I'll let that sit there.
Thank you.
Roving Mike, who would like a question? We've got one over here, sir.
Thank you. Hi, Steve. It's Adam Raw from the National Trust.
Hello.
You talked a little bit about your time as Environment Secretary. What would you say your legacy is as Environment Secretary? What are you most proud of doing? And what will you take forward from that time into your new role at Housing?
Well, we were focusing very much on what we could do to help nature to recover. I mean, a relatively small thing we've done, but I think it's great for organisations like the National Trust, is we've allowed you and things like the RSPB to consent your own applications on the grounds that, environmental applications, on the grounds that you're not going to harm the environment. Your organisation's the public trust to look after it. So by consenting organisations like yours, we take 40% of applications out of the pipeline, and then the commercial applications that need looking into can be dealt with much faster. So I think that's a very good reform. But perhaps a bigger one that will have a big impact on this country is the Land Use Framework and the Nature Restoration Fund. The Land Use Framework gives us information at a very granular level about the best way to use particular pieces of land in the country, because as a relatively small country with a big population, we have a lot of pressures on our land for things like energy infrastructure, housing, nature, food production, and we need to make sure we make the best use of all of it to get the maximum outcome. So the Land Use Framework, which is probably something most people haven't heard of, I think is a really radical change. And the Nature Restoration Fund means that developers who are building all of this housing under Build Baby Build, not the alternative phrasing, will pay money into the fund, and then Natural England will spend that to restore nature at scale across whole landscapes. So this government is going to be great for nature.
Any more questions? Okay. I can see Matt Dathan from The Times, so I'm going to go with a journalist.
Thank you, yeah. Matt Dathan from The Times. Hi, Steve. Are you pressing ahead with the working group on Islamophobia? And if you are, how will you ensure it will not be a blasphemy law through the back door, and how will you protect freedom of speech?
Yeah. No, well, that was set up a while ago, and I think it's due to report fairly shortly, actually. But when I'm looking at their proposal, which I will need to do, I haven't seen it yet, so I can't comment on it. Paramount in my mind will be the need to protect free speech. That must come first. We won't allow the introduction of blasphemy laws by the back door. As a country, we spent centuries really overcoming that kind of thing, and that won't be coming back in. Nobody has the right not to be offended, and people should have the right to criticise or even mock religion or even individual religions. So for me, free speech is very, very important, but I don't want to see the kind of, aggressive incitements to violence and hatred against individual communities. So let's see what it looks like, and we'll take it from there.
Is there any scenario where you can see that it would not be a blasphemy law? Is there any scenario where you can see that it would not be a
Well,
blasphemy law?
let's see what it looks like. But I told you what I'm going to measure it against, and that's what I'll do.
Got time for one more question. It's a lot of people. The lady here. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I thought you did.
As well. Jill Rutter from the Institute for Government. Is there any prospect of a council tax revaluation being commissioned while you're Secretary of State?
That is not something I'm looking at, no.
Got a straight
I
answer.
think we've got enough fights on our hands, to be honest.
Does Rachel Reeves agree with you?
We haven't even discussed it. It's not on the agenda.
I'm very sorry. I know we've got lots of questions, but we have to finish it there. Thank you, everyone. We will be back at 4:20, which is not very long away, with Peter Kyle, who's being interviewed by our own Amber Kelvoy. But now, thank you very much for coming in, Steve Reed.
Dan.
Cheers.
See you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.